We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This is Cheryl from Dja Dja Wurrung country.
I'm very happy with the new song we've just come up with for Nia Stamatopoulos.
Ooh, you have a song for Nia Stamatopoulos. I'm already impressed.
Yes, and it went down very well on Friday night. A bit of just a classic. Stamatopoulos, she'll make a killer pass, she'll put you on your ass, Stamatopoulos.
That's like...
that was brilliant. Shall I just say that we're already live streaming, so thank you very much, Maj, for that.
Sorry, everyone.
No, it's perfect. It was a nice, soft intro. And so what does Nia think of that? Did she turn around and give you a wave? She didn't get an orange because I think it was Jessie picked up the orange this week.
It was Jessie, so she absolutely put in a great stint. So, yeah, I don't know what Nia thought. I should have asked her after the game, but I'm sure we'll be singing that a few times this season. So she had a really good debut for the Roar, I thought, in midfield. So, yeah, looking forward to more singing.
All right. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, to Beyond 90, the podcast. This is episode 74. My name is Cheryl Downs. My pronouns are she, her. We have Maj and Eric on the podcast with us so far. I'm not sure, maybe Steffen will turn up later, but we started off the podcast by a nice little song from Maj, and I'd love to think that could be a regular segment right at the start. As much as we've got history, we could push history back a little bit, and then we can just start off with the song of the week, which many of them might come from the Raw Corps, which is the Brisbane Raw supporter group that Maj is part of, or maybe you can give us some Matildas ones as well, which would be a really nice way to lead into the Women's World Cup 2023 to make sure that everyone who listens to the podcast knows what's going on. Anyway, that was round 2 of the A-League Women's has just been done and dusted. There were some good results in there. But before we get to that, let's talk quickly about history. As always, episode 74 coincides with cap number 74. This one's a little bit different, a little bit interesting. Someone who's not necessarily coaching anymore, to the best of my knowledge anyway. But cap number 74 was Denie Pentecost. Hopefully I've pronounced your name correctly there, Denis, but footballer, midfielder, filmmaker, just for something different. And not just any filmmaker, I'll go through it, but Denie Pentecost debuted in 1994. She played 25 matches for Matildas, including 14 A internationals. She competed at the 1994 OFC Women's Championship. And for people who are listening, Australia used to be in, sorry for the acronyms, Australia used to be in the OFC, which is the Oceania Football Confederation. But in whatever year it was, we moved to the Asian Football Confederation. And one of the reasons for that was that I think we wanted more competition, harder competition. But anyway, so there's a little tidbit. Maybe Eric will go off and find out when we joined the AFC. In 1995...
January 1st, 2006.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
1995, Denis also played in the in the FIFA Women's World Cup, and domestically she played her club football for Sydney Olympic. There was something in there about Blacktown as well, which I think would make Eric pretty happy.
Was there?
Yeah, there was something in there. I'll go back and have a wee look. Not necessarily for Blacktown, but I think she originated near Blacktown.
Mm-hmm.
So just to keep me straight and honest. But anyway, post-football, Pentecost directed a short film titled Sexy Thing, which was in competition at the 2006 Cannes Film Festival. So there you go, something quite different for a Matilda than we've seen before. That was pretty interesting. Hot topics of the week. The first one I'll just run through quickly by myself, and then we'll jump into some good conversation about the rankings. So the first thing is that FIFA and a UN agency have planned a global network to tackle sexual abuse in sport. which is a very important initiative, particularly given what we've seen not only in football, but in other sports around the world. So a really good initiative. We just have to see how it works, how committed they are, and if they're putting money into it or just saying do it from the side of your desk. In other big important news, the rankings have come out. So the rankings come out periodically. I think this is the first time that rankings have been released in the last 4 months for the women. Maybe not an important point in time for the rankings. Sometimes they come out just before major tournaments where it's really important because then you work out where you are seeded. No surprises at the very top. So the US women's national team, who Australia just played 2 matches against, stay on top. The big mover in the top 10, or one of the big movers, but biggest mover, I think, by points is Spain. Thoughts, Maj, Eric, on the rankings?
Well, I mean, Spain, they're just going nowhere but up. So I would suspect. And when's the Euro draw happening? So that's got to be happening soon. So
the tournament draw, it's already happened.
Has it? Okay. All right. So it won't impact it there. But yeah, so we might see some more movement after that major tournament, I suspect. But so I think we'll probably see Spain keep climbing. It's really interesting that Brazil have sort of maintaining their spot sort of there in 7th as well, but Australia is still maintaining that 11th spot outside the top 10. It'd be good to get a few results and get back into that top 10 and maybe leapfrog Korea, North Korea, who are still just sitting there with no movement because they've been doing nothing.
Yes.
It's an interesting point, Madge, as well, because when we come up to the Asian Cup, which is just a month and a bit away, we're not necessarily going to play teams that are that highly ranked above us. It will be a tournament for good points rather than just the friendlies. But yeah, I mean, you also need to play teams that are above us. The chances of losing against a team below you is a risk that you don't want to take. But anyway, for Australia, maybe at the moment, it's not the biggest deal if they do lose rankings points because they will still maintain their position in the Women's World Cup in the same group. Yep. Anyway, Eric, your thoughts on there as well?
I think you've all covered it well. No surprises. I think my main takeaway is congratulations to the Philippines for moving up to their highest ever ranking of 64th. And that's another team that obviously will be looking to build on things at the Asian Cup, which is already next month. I've just realized that. Where did the time go?
What do you think is the big change for the Philippines? Is it that they're getting more games?
Yeah, actually playing games is the big change.
Yeah, okay. I think the other change for me is that the Netherlands have dropped from 4th to 5th and France have gone up from 5th to 4th. The Netherlands are interesting because not that long ago, they were the Spain, in my mind anyway. You could just see them going up and up and up, and they've stabilised a bit. And maybe that's what's happening to Australia as well. You can go up and, you can get to your peak, but then maintaining that peak is something that we're seeing probably with the US. Sweden have dropped and come back up. So, there will be some change. Canada maintain their 6th position on the rankings as well, which I think for them is good at the moment, but they did lose somewhat recently to Mexico. So rankings are always fun, but like I said, at different times of the year, it's more important than other times. All righty, what else has happened in the world? I think with the Matildas, they've just been playing club football, so we can talk about that later. Round 2 of what we will always call the dub, but the A-League Women's came about. How was the broadcast? Did we notice any glitches this time around?
The only stream I actually really paid attention to was the Melbourne Derby, which, as far as I can tell, was fine. There were some tweets about Adelaide Canberra, which and potentially some of the commentary, which I'd rather. I think everyone said what they needed to say already.
Tell me, because I was watching the game. I wasn't actually really looking at the tweets, although at one point I thought that they got Michelle Heyman's name mixed up with Hayward.
Paige
and
Hayward.
My wife and I were watching the match together, and she's like, how can they get that wrong? And then I clicked that there was also a Hayward, but it wasn't who they were calling Hayward.
Yeah. I think it was just glaring, especially when you do it directly after a goal that Michelle Heyman had scored.
Yeah,
is probably the most egregious part.
Yes.
You can maybe let it slide when it's just in general play once or twice, but that's a pretty big one to get wrong straight after a goal.
All right. Well, there you go. Thanks, Dale and Stefan. We've got you joining the podcast as well, just as we're going through round 2 results. So I'll call them out and jump in when you want to talk about the exciting, sexy bits. But Newcastle against Wellington. Wellington in round 1 had quite an interesting game that people probably weren't prepared to see. This time, maybe we were prepared to see it, and it was quite a different game. Eric had provided some post-match commentary from that match as well. So Newcastle were 5-1 victors over Wellington. Anyone want to talk about that match?
Yeah, I think I'll do that. It's a fun trip up to Newcastle. I just gotten a tattoo, and then my phone bailed me out from getting stuck in traffic on the motorway. But I made it with several minutes to spare, and I think it's right. Wellington couldn't repeat the high of round 1, but it's all part of the learning process. I think the very well-spoken Phoenix head coach Gemma Lewis said post-match they gave the Jets star players too much respect and didn't pressure as much as they did against the Wanderers, so that's something they'll work on. By the way, I encourage everyone to, if they haven't already, read the Gemma Lewis article on Keep Up about the challenges of having a bunch of kids and living away from home for an extended period of time. There was New Zealand football history with Ava Pritchard's first goal. Ava Pritchard scoring the first goal for Wellington, so their first goal in this competition. But that was after really the horse had bolted in a strong second half from the Jets. Oh, and also Talitha Kramer made her return to the national stage almost 3 years after her last appearance, which was for the Wanderers. So Molly Apperton was delighted by that. And for the Jets, nice to see Kirsty Fenton score her first goal in the competition, even though it might have not been intentional. Not so lovely to see.
I love those goals.
Yes. As I think it might have been Dale that said, the reverse Tessa Tamplin, someone wearing a ribbon and scoring with an intended cross. But yes, it was not nice to see Kirsty Fenton get taken off with an ankle injury. And I'd love it if players I mentioned in my Jets season preview could stop getting injured. But yeah, it's Newcastle. Also on another first A-League women's goal for lightning fast Jets winger Sophie Harding. So all in all, lovely time out for the Jets fans, and Ash Wilson understandably delighted after the game.
Very good. That's a nice wrap. Thank you very much for that. Would have been a tough trip home for the team from Wellington. For those people who are new to the A-League Women's or new to the podcast, the Wellington team, because of COVID restrictions, aren't based in Wellington at the moment in New Zealand. They're actually based in Wollongong. So I don't know how far or how long that would take, but
4 hours.
I imagine that the bus ride home would have been pretty somber. But I think Gemma Lewis also talked about, unless I've made this up or read this somewhere, they talked about there are lessons in losing football as well. Yes. So it's not all bad that they had gone down. It's how you react in those circumstances. Yes. The next match that we have on there, Brisbane were at home against Perth. Brisbane, who suffered an unlucky defeat last round. Madge, you want to take us through this one?
Yeah, so last round we were hoping to turn it around, and I think this one was a little unlucky as well, but maybe not as unlucky as the first round. I thought Perth really set up really well, and I guess one of the main questions I had about the Brisbane team going into this season was whether or not their attack could click and actually put the ball away, and I think that's what we've seen in the first two games, and particularly in this second game, there were good periods of possession and controlling the ball and the attacking attacking raids, but not really getting a lot of quality chances off on goal. I don't think Morgan Aquino had that much to do compared to the first game. So Perth really tidied up their defence, and Brisbane couldn't find a way through. And if you can't find a way to get through and get yourself on the scoreboard, you're always going to leave yourself susceptible to that's just football things happening, like what happened, getting Eka putting a foot out trying to deflect a shot and just looping over George Worth into the goal. So Disappointing, but really fun night. I'm going to say the game was moved from the Gold Coast to Perry Park here in Brisbane, so there were over 2,000 people on a Friday night in the heart of Brisbane, at the home of football in Brisbane. So it was a really, really fun night. So I guess that's always a positive when you can get a big raucous crowd going, and hopefully we'll see similar going into next week. But congrats to Perth. They've gotten off to an absolute flyer. And as far as Brisbane's concerned, I guess this is the type of, to get into that probably, those third and fourth positions, into those finals positions. These are the sorts of games that Brisbane would be looking to get some points from. So they're really going to have to get a move on. And Perth have started, set themselves up really well, considering that, both Canberra and City have sort of split their games. So Perth looking good.
Yep. And good to see Katrina Gorry out there. I think positives for Perth have been Katrina Gorry's out there. Aisha Norrie is playing really quite well. I think she's getting plenty of time on the ball and pretty good disposal accuracy as well, not just getting the ball, but doing something relatively reasonable with it. I thought for Perth, Crane seemed to be pretty good. Hannah Lowry, I think last week Neil said that he thought that she hadn't done enough. I actually think that she's getting on the ball enough, and it's more about what she's got around her as well. So, yeah, coming out with a win is one thing, that your team is consistently able to do it and not just winning through a little bit of luck is something else entirely. I've just updated the show notes as well, because I did have the scores reversed for the next game, where I had the Wanderers defeating Sydney 2-0. It was actually the other way around. Do I have a volunteer? Dale, Eric, anyone really?
Eric, you were there. Eric described it to us as a very much emerging Jets performance from the Wanderers. I think that they, it's pretty common to say, but it may seem like a bit of a cop out in terms of analysis, but like Sydney were just clearly the better team on the day. It's not generally a good plan to give the ball away like in the 18-yard box to last year's Golden Boot winner. But
so I've heard.
I'm not an expert on these subjects, so I won't claim to be. But yeah, I've got to say, as Eric said, I think that a little bit of pressure at Wanderers, to be honest, even this early in the season.
Yes, and the best bit of Wanderers' performance was Sheridan Gallagher running over people. The worst bit was pretty much everything else. So They looked like 11 strangers out there. It was not fun to watch. And as for Sydney, Ante Juric, I got the brief chat to him post-match, happy with the result, but not really their performance either. He thought they were scrappy as well, which I think is fair enough. Was happy with Sarah Hunter, who's really, I think, kind of unexpectedly started both games so far and has done really well and has shown her wonderful passing range. I was happy to see Remy's revenge, though, scoring twice against her old club. And Remy's
kissed the badge after the second goal as well. Big mood.
You love it. And Remy Simpson scoring against the Wanderers is something I've been manifesting ever since the 2018-19 season. If you want to know why, drop me a DM. I just don't want to say it publicly.
The point that you make about like the fact that the performance wasn't fantastic, like Sydney had nearly 60% of the ball, but like just couldn't string passes together. I'm just having a look at the stats at the moment. Neither team, like Wanderers below 60% passing accuracy, Oof. Sydney below 70%. Like it wasn't necessarily a rampantly violent game that you're kind of like missing passes because you're worried about getting clattered into. But I mean, I can definitely see why neither manager was really happy with the performance. But as you said, happy, Sydney got the 3 points, and sometimes winning ugly is what good teams do.
Mm-hmm.
2 questions. One question, where did you get your stats from? Just because Cheryl and the Keep Up site aren't going very well.
Mm-hmm. Me
but
too.
Anyway, that's one question. And then the other question is, what does it look like for Catherine Canuli? Catherine Canuli, for those who aren't aware, is the head coach of the Western Sydney Wanderers at the moment. In terms of what they should be hopefully achieving with the team that they have, and I'm not saying that they've got the AA team, but where should they be benchmarking themselves at the moment?
That's a good question. I think the benchmark would have been to beat Wellington pretty convincingly last week.
Yes,
if I'm honest. And I know that we discussed how well Wellington played, but I just, as Eric said, like it looked like they met in the car park and were just like, okay, so this is a cool preseason game. It's a kind of been an issue with Wanderers for a couple of seasons now that they haven't necessarily been able to put it together, which is a real shame because they've obviously got that fantastic facility out in Rooty Hill, and they've got got a huge swath of players to pick from in terms of New South Wales. They've got juniors. There's obviously a selective sports high school out that way as well.
Two actually.
Yeah, New South Wales Institute as well. So there's plenty of youth. But it is, and I think it's tough on Catherine Cannulli as well because it feels kind of like she's kind of fallen into this job. I know that she was an assistant for a long time, but with Heffernan going so suddenly at the end of last season, or really in the midway through the off season, Cannulli kind of being thrown into this. I know that she's been a coach for SD Raiders at a lower level, but there's a big difference between kind of like, coaching at state level and the big dogs. And in a way, I kind of feel for her in that sense because she hasn't really had that ability to have her to craft this team in her image.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in saying that, there are some positives for them. It's relatively early in the season is definitely one of them. They got a point last week is another against the team that was very obviously kind of looking to not concede. But as Maj said before, the first recipe, the first step to winning football games is typically putting the ball in the net. And if you can't do that, you're not really going to win many.
Yeah. Also, by the way, thanks to stats legend Andy Howe for putting this on Twitter. In the Sydney derby, 2 15-year-olds made their debuts in this game. Sydney midfielder Mary Stanish-Floody and Wanderers defender Alexia Apostolakis. So it was good to find out what positions they play because I didn't know. And neither of them are regular NPL first graders. So Stanish-Floody was in the reserves. And Apostolakis hasn't played higher than NPL under-17s until now, so that's quite the jump. But good to see her make it.
Oh, very good. Thanks for that. And thank you, George, for his little vocal intro there. I don't know if you heard my dog
really good
barking.
Chat from George.
Yes.
Really good chat.
Made more sense than I did.
Yeah, perfect. All right, on to the next match, which is a little bit of an Eric v. Cheryl combination thing going on here. So Melbourne City, it was the Melbourne derby. We had Melbourne City against Melbourne Victory. Melbourne Victory, obviously last year or last season being the champions. Just like to say that any time that I can. And they won yet again. So it was a 2-1 victory over City. I think the key points for me is Alex Chidiac, first game out of the gates. She's landed. She's such a professional, heavily underrated. And I think there was even an article which referred to her being diminutive. I don't see her game that way. I just see her being an excellent player on the ball, just the ball close to her. She's brilliant at it. She created I think it was the second goal, which saw...
No, first goal.
Lynne Williams score. Was it the first goal?
First goal for Catherine Zimmerman.
You're quite correct. So I've made things up anyway. But Chids was really, really valuable in there. We've had Chids on the podcast before, so she's a great person to watch play football. Lynne Williams in her first game for Melbourne Victory. Previously, she played for the Western Sydney Wanderers. She's come out and she's scored a goal straight away. I think she didn't come on until, I'm making it up, but second half sometime or other. So, yeah, it was interesting to see how Victory went without their captain, Kayla Morrison, who it's been confirmed that she did her ACL, but she was still at the ground and still part of the support network for the team as well. Melbourne City, Eric, your thoughts on positives for Melbourne City, even though they lost?
I mean, they're difficult. They're proving themselves to, at the very least, be difficult to beat again. It's good. Tori Termuth played a full game. Darcy Malone made another sub appearance. Hannah Wilkinson, I feel like she's getting into the right areas, so surely the goals will start coming soon. But yeah, and also Winona Heatley looked very neat and tidy at the back for Melbourne City, so she's been really impressive. That's a great signing. Sorry, Maj.
Yes, I know. But on Hannah Wilkinson, there's a lot of online chat about people, including myself, having Hannah in our She Plays fantasy teams and getting very excited about that break on goal. But so you hope that she'll start putting some away because that's probably what they really need at the moment. At the back, they look they look pretty good. They look pretty solid. With Stoddy and Heatley and Tumeth. So it's really just getting those attacking shoes on. There's a few teams in that boat, I think.
Also, I'd love to know.
Round one too, Eric. So
sorry,
Winnie was very good in round one against Canberra as well.
Yes, she was. And also, I would like to say Polydor fast becoming a hip and shoulder expert. I love the way she just moves people off the ball so she can have it. It's wonderful to see. I think that's pretty much.
I mean, not that we have to feel sorry for Victory, but they're losing some defensive stuff with Amy Jackson getting a red card in the game, which, considering that they're playing Brisbane next week, it's like, well, maybe. Can I just say
that was up there with the most obvious red cards I've ever seen. She may as well have just walked off the pitch. And I was saying this to friends of the pod off mic, but pretty close to like the opposite of a Gordie Howe hat trick in ice hockey. There's this concept of a Gordie Howe hat trick, which is where you get taken off the ice for a fight, you score, and you get an assist. Own goal and a red card is pretty close. So a shout out to Amy Jackson for what was, in fairness, a brilliant finish. Just in the wrong direction. You could see when Casey, I just watched the replay just then. Casey Dumont looks like somebody's just like stolen her car. Jackson just nods it in and she's just like sitting there. I know this is a visual gag, but she's just sitting there like waiting for soup. Just like, oh, there's nothing going on here. Poor thing. I've got to say, she's been in good nick too, Casey Dumont. Really, really been impressed with her. She made that really good save against Stott at the back stick in this game, which was pretty handy. And obviously coming back from an ACL as well. So good to see her back in good nick and back in the league.
Yeah, Dale, I'd agree that save was probably for me save of the week. Though I thought that was a great save.
Good call.
In podcast, about save of the rounds or save of the weeks, we've sort of had them off the shelf, but happy to put them back on the shelf. I don't think it's a bad idea. Stefan, how about you take us through? We need to give you some airtime as well. And I can't see what top you're wearing, but I like it's like niche black going on there.
It's the German away jersey from the last Euros. So it's
very nice.
Nice jersey. Yes,
very nice.
Thank you. Just a little bit on the Paramount coverage though for that. For the Melbourne derby, I was actually playing football while that was on. So, and I still haven't been able to watch it. 24 hours later, the game is still not up. So, just wanted to throw that
I thought I saw it.
Okay.
Because
I've looked a couple of times. I haven't seen it, but if I'm wrong, I apologise. But
no, I think it's a fair comment. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if it's 24 hours, but I missed the game between Brisbane and Perth.
The full game isn't up.
I
missed the game between Brisbane and Perth, and I needed to watch the whole thing just from a voting perspective, and I couldn't watch it straight away, almost on delay like you used to be able to. You'd be able to, if you missed the first 10 minutes, you could start and just catch up when it was on KO. But, is that the biggest thing in the world, or is the quality of the vision important? But anyway, take us away, Stefan, through the last match of the round, which was Adelaide defeating Canberra 2-1. It looked better for Canberra until the end.
It did, and in a game where there was very little between the teams statistical wise, it was a very good bounce back from Adelaide, I have to say, after their fairly heavy round one loss to Victory. But it did look better for Canberra. We set up a little differently. We're still tweaking things, I think, the team in green, and I think there's probably still a little bit of tweaking to come. But we had Carly Ross back and starting on the right with Laura Hughes in front of her, so they're good mates. So they would have enjoyed that. Although I think Laura is probably a little more effective in the middle of the park, in the centre. But we also had Lauren Keir in the middle with Ali Haran. And Chelsea Washington moved into centre mid, and Grace Maher moved out of centre back into a six role. So Ashley Sykes was on the bench, and Ashley was very good in the second half. She gave the team some much needed energy in the second half.
So I was trying to heckle, but I was on mute, so it didn't come out very well. I said, you can't have 10 midfielders. You want all of your players to be in the midfield.
Yeah, well, I think the midfield's where we still got some work to do. I don't think it's quite working there yet for us. So, but we got off to a good start. We scored our first goal for the season, a nice through ball from Chelsea through to Michelle. The commentators were wondering about whether it was offside or not. Must have been a near thing, but she took it delightfully with her left foot. So the first goal for the season for herself and the team. And Adelaide has had some good performers. Emily Condon was very good. But the star of the show, I think, was the Japanese player, Sho Sasaki.
Nanako Sasaki, yeah.
Yeah, so two moments of real magic from her when she struck the first goal from outside the box after an errant back pass from Canberra United in their own third, and Keely Richards saved and came out to Sasaki and she belted it in. And then that delightful little scoop ball over the top for the win. Yeah, you
can't as you say, like you can't complain when you lose a game to, like, obviously Canberra's defensive shape could probably have a word, but like that scoop, you see that on a futsal court and you're like, okay, so this person's quite good. But to see that in like a full field, 11v11 game is just something else. That's up there with, honestly, one of the like best short range assists I've seen in the history of the W League. I know that's a big call, but like to pull that out in stoppage time to win a game that you probably didn't really have all that much right to get the 3 points out of is, take some player.
I agree, and it was her 2 moments of quality that decided the game in the end, I think. So, so Canberra building. I think they're making progress, but 2 losses from 2 games, short season, it's going to hurt, and they're going to have to get things right fairly quickly. It's very good that Carly got through 90 minutes, and she was very dynamic in the first half, and probably got a little tired in the second, but got through the 90, so that's really good for her. It's her first 90 minutes probably in over a year or a year or so. So it's good to see. It's a bit of a work in progress still with Canberra, and perhaps a little more tweaking to come in the midfield, I suspect. But let's wait and see.
I've got a yellow card actually today. I need to give it to Dale right now. I think the mention of futsal, we might see Eric swooning a little bit. So we have to be very gentle when we talk about futsal.
So how many retrospective cards do I have for my feature articles?
Or you're suspended for the next 8 weeks.
Okay. No one's getting their articles published. Oh, well, not my problem.
Yeah. But also, just before we go over the dub, one thing I was probably disappointed with this round was some of the crowds. Actually, we had 2 derbies and 2 double headers, and both of those crowds, I'm pretty sure, were under 2,000.
Yeah, well, the Melbourne crowd was... we had Angela Christian Wilkes there mentioning the fact that anybody who went to that game was in the corner bay because they only had one side of the stadium open.
Yep.
Getting blasted by the sun, I believe.
Yeah, it was a hot one in Melbourne, like 7 inches from the midday sun, and no one was going to sit out in the sun at that ground.
And then the Newcastle game. It was a Friday game starting, I think 3 or 4 o'clock, 3 or 4 o'clock, 5 p.m. Yeah, but it's just really difficult for people to get there.
Yeah.
Just another little gripe about double headers.
Is it still partly a COVID response? I have to admit, I didn't go to the Melbourne derby. I was ready to go, and then I completely blame my wife that we went out to a very long lunch and we basically didn't get there. But even still, I'm still considering the impacts of, do I want to go to a game? Do I want to be in that sort of environment? So I'm not surprised there's a little bit of a hit at the moment.
I was going to say, we'll come on to this probably later on when we talk about Queens of the Week, but like the fact that Wanderers game was before, so like Sydney fans probably would have travelled if it was a doubleheader with the men's team. But the game was the MacArthur game after that didn't feature the Sydney men's team. So it was Western Sydney, MacArthur in the second game. MacArthur obviously don't have a W League team or a women's team, or they have a women's team, but they don't play in the A League women. So Sydney, who generally turn up to these games, if we look back historically, whether they've been at Marconi or wherever, they generally get a decent turnout. And in terms of the Melbourne game, I don't know. I don't know why there wasn't more there. I think it was also potentially, again, just because it didn't feature both sides that were playing in the game afterwards. It could be that. I mean, it could be 1,000 things, to be perfectly honest. But,
that kind of qualifies as a Joker of the Week. And speaking of Jokers of the Week, we may as well throw another one in there now. This week there was a new partnership announced for the Liberty A-League, or maybe it was the A-Leagues in general, and it's a gambling partnership. Now, I'm not going to mention who it is, but for me, and Madge and I were talking a little bit off mic, it's not something that I want to see in football. It's not something I want to see in sports. I don't think it plays a part. I absolutely believe in the financial viability of these leagues. I get it. I just wish that this wasn't the way that we saw it happening.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't think that's really hard to justify. I mean, it's hard as somebody who follows the Sydney men's team, who both men and women are sponsored by the Star, which is Australia's largest gambling organisation, outside of, or brick and mortar, to then kind of say, oh, well, we shouldn't have gambling sponsorships. But at the same time, really, like, you don't have to go to the Star and gamble. It's a hotel. That's where the Lyric Theatre is. I went to see Book of Mormon there. It was very sweary, but very good. But like, I've never gambled at the Star. I think that in 5 to 10 to 15 years, we'll look back at these and, gambling sponsorships will be our Marlborough Man. I don't think there's really any question about that.
That's exactly what Madge and I were talking about as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, Joker of the Week there. Let's talk about some maybe better news in football. The Women's Champions League, we're up to the final stages at the moment. I think Dale tends to be our absolute expert on this. There's something that everyone will want to make sure that they listen to if you haven't already seen it or heard about it. We'll go through a little bit of a conversation about Sam Kerr and her yellow card. But Dale, do you want to take us through the results? Maybe just for time, just go through the Aussie results if possible.
Yeah, sure. Just pulling them up for you now. So I think the biggest result of the week we'll leave till last, but we will go through them now. So this week we did have Servette, which is Tessa Tamplin's team, went down 3-0 at home to Wolfsburg. That's Servette's, I believe, seen them out of contention, unfortunately. Chelsea 0, Juventus 0. We will come back to that game in a moment. BK Häcken went down Dylan Holmes' team to Bayern Munich at home. They went down 5-1. Arsenal played their game at the Arsenal Stadium for sponsorship reasons against Barcelona, and boy, howdy, did they lose 4-0. They were absolutely beaten off the park. Interesting fact about that game, which I haven't shared with anybody. Barcelona wore last year's third strip, the yellow jersey, because UEFA does not allow them to wear their purple away jersey because it has colour-changing elements. That's this week's sartorial note with Dale.
Sorry, explain.
It's hypercolour.
Is
it a hypercolour jersey?
So it has a colour changing element on the badge and the Nike tick, and because of that, they're not allowed to wear it. Thanks, UEFA. But yeah, it doesn't matter what Barcelona were wearing. They could have been wearing trucks for all that matter. They absolutely pounded Arsenal into the dirt. 4-0 they went down. And the last game of the round that featured any Australians was Lyon 5, Benfica 0. That was in Portugal. Ellie Carpenter obviously getting a run out for Lyon. Good to see Ada Hegerberg back from the start as well for that one. But I think the main talking point was Chelsea 0, Juventus 0. Sam Kerr killed a guy. She just tackled him into space. And it was probably the best thing that happened to me all week. So thanks, Sam.
So what are everyone's thoughts on the call? Because I want to, and I don't want to cause trouble here, but referees' rules, right? They're on the pitch for a reason. They're the gods out on the pitch. And I did ask a friend of mine what the technical reason was for the card, and I'm going to somewhat read. I'll pretend it's my thoughts, but it's basically she was given a caution in theory because of unsporting behaviour and or for showing a lack of respect for the game. But technically, hold on to your seats, don't fall off. But technically, it should be red card for violent conduct if you apply the full interpretation of the law.
Yeah. The rule is with I think the other section. So it's violent conduct or endangering the safety of an opponent is the other way, which is one of those rules where it's like you don't have to make contact with the tackle if you're sliding in at knee height kind of thing. I was really surprised she wasn't sent off. But yeah, I mean, it's a yellow card. I think that if she was sent off, I mean, it would have been a farce. It probably would have been rescinded as well, honestly. But yellow card means it's been dealt with on the pitch and it can't be rescinded.
Yep. And look, I'm all for, and the person that I spoke to also said that, look, you know, it's still within their remit to interpret the rules and do what they think is necessary. I think the conversations that have probably been had in most pubs around Australia and probably around the world at the moment is that good on you, Sam Kerr. You'll definitely cop a spot in our Queens of the Week. Any final thoughts on that? Anyone else want to have a say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Madge, go first.
Okay.
I feel like we're going to say the same thing, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm on the people who are coming up with the obnoxious thought experiment around, you know, if that was a woman who ran on and a bloke did it, I get pretty annoyed with those sorts of equivalences. One, the
security would have been better. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Security should have been there. Security would have been all over it if it was a player running onto a Champions League men's ground and would have been able to just walk around the players like that. And there is a different context, I think, when there's a pretty smug, obnoxious bloke just wandering around a field. When there's been some pretty horrific history of attacks on particularly female athletes on pitches, so and sport and sports grounds. So I think this is one of those. It's okay to not tolerate intolerance and just give it the old hip and shoulder.
Yes, and yes, I will age myself by saying I remember the Monica Seller stabbing incident. It's the first thing, one of the first things I thought of, and yeah, that could have been dealt with so much better. The reason I heard for this individual being on the pitch is incredibly lame as well. Apparently, he wanted a selfie with Magda Eriksson. Ben Gilby has selfies with like the entire Chelsea squad. They're not hard to get, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Also, did enjoy Magda Eriksson's congratulatory bum tap on Sam Kerr after absolutely wasting that guy.
Yep.
Stefan, your thoughts on that? You're conspicuously quiet.
Yeah, no further thoughts. It was same as Dale. It was it made my week in a way as well, just for the theatre of it all, I guess.
Yeah, very good. I do worry that it sets a precedent for other people coming onto the pitch and the security not being there or the players having to deal with it. So I think it's something that probably needs to be looked at in the wider context. So the Women's Champions League continues this week, Thursday and Friday morning, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. There are some games on at very reasonable times, and I'm probably not the expert on this. Some of the teams have already qualified. Some teams have yet to qualify, and we're waiting for some of those final results. So it will be quite interesting.
The big one is Chelsea Wolfsburg.
Oh yeah, that one
on Friday morning, 7:00. Set your alarms. So Chelsea are above Wolfsburg on the table because they have a better record against Wolfsburg. So the way that it works in the Champions League is that teams who are equal on points, their places are determined by head-to-head results, not necessarily goal difference. So Wolfsburg have to get a result against Chelsea to qualify. Arsenal have already qualified, but will want to be kind of like, playing themselves into form against Hoffenheim. But as you say, Shez, 4:45 games, I wouldn't blame you if you're not getting up for those. That's more than fair. But the 7:00 games on Friday, it's Christmas time. People don't care that you're not working hard. Just watch the football while you're at work. You have my permission, please.
Very good. All right, let's whiz around the world as fast as we can just to make sure we've got time for our Queens of the Week. So in Japan, the competition there is still postponed with no further information at this time. I think it'll kick off in the new year. And as we heard, Alex Chidiac is playing for Melbourne Victory at the moment on loan from Jeff Chiba. In the FAWSL, I don't know if anyone wants to talk about all the results, but I'll whiz through them. So Chelsea had a rare defeat to Reading. So it was a 1-0 victory for Reading, which was huge celebration for them. So well done to them. It was a 1-1 draw between Everton and West Ham United. Birmingham City went down 2-3 against Man City. Hayley Razzo did not score. It was Kaya Simon who scored. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Not for Man City, she didn't. But
I'm moving on.
Okay, yes.
Kaya Simon scored in the match for Tottenham against Aston Villa, so they had a 2-1 victory over Aston Villa. And then in the match between Arsenal and Leicester City, it's top v bottom, and it was a 4-0 victory, which is interesting because Arsenal just coming off the back of the Champions League beating by Barcelona as well. So you can see the top of the FAWSL is not necessarily competing very well with the other leagues, or at least with Barcelona. Any quick thoughts around the matches in the FAWSL?
Birmingham City led twice against Manchester City, which is a big surprise. And just Manchester City's they won, but I mean, they're supposed to be wiping the floor with Birmingham, really.
Big result for Man City, literally the richest women's sports team in the world.
Yeah.
Arsenal also had 3/4 of the ball against Leicester, so pray for Leicester.
Yes.
That's a lot of running.
Yep.
It's also one of those interesting ones, like Arsenal are sort of in a very good position now to sort of take out the league, and which seems a little bit odd when Chelsea feel like the team that have the form and have the players and the talent and the performances. So that loss against Reading, a really big loss for Chelsea, because it really just embeds Arsenal up there on top of the ladder.
The good thing about the Women's Super League is that it's a long competition. It's not like the dub where, you blink and you lose 2 games at the start and it really puts you on the back foot. I think there's an opportunity here for anyone to still give Arsenal a little bit of a tickle and a challenge. And it'd be interesting when we see Arsenal and Chelsea and see how those things go. But I think it looks like an interesting season. I also think back to when Ben Gilby was on the podcast, and g'day to Ben. We hope that we'll have him back on the podcast in the next couple of weeks when he's on school holidays. But I think he said Arsenal were no chance, or they'd likely miss the top 3.
I got something for this. After in his wonderful, this kind of links into what we're discussing, in his wonderful FA Cup final piece where Chelsea demolished Arsenal, his original wording was it's impossible to see Chelsea not winning the other trophies. And I edited it on just to help him out a bit. And this is why, because now they're 4 points behind. Yeah. I was thinking, they're not leading the league.
I did predict Arsenal to miss the Champions League, but we don't need to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I'm not that I'm one to talk about predictions, obviously.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's move on. Scottish Women's Premier League. Partick Thistle went down 0-2 to Glasgow City with Aoife Colville, who I'm told is not one of ours. She's one of Ireland's.
Why? She's one of mine. She's not one of yours. I don't know what's. Nice to get the updates, but.
That's why she's in here then, because she's one of yours then. And Celtic had a 7-0 victory over Motherwell. So that's Jacinta Galabadarachchi. I couldn't actually see who the goal scorers were, because when I checked the scores, I just literally had the scores. In France, we have a look, and Montpellier were 1-0 victors over Soyo Charente. Dale, I look at you to help me pronounce these things.
I think I heard that Mary Fowler got an assist.
Yep, assisted the only goal of the game. I did look that up. So, Mary Fowler continuing to ball out. Absolutely fantastic.
On you, Mary. And she was actually, we don't have this in our notes, but wasn't she listed in the Young 11 of the year or something or other? Sorry, I'm probably not.
What world or the World Stats Football? Oh, God. Some World Youth 11 of the year. She was in it. And it was also like a 3-4-3 with 4 attacking midfielders, but we weren't. But I'd love to see that team actually play together.
And then Lyon had a 2-1 victory over Paris, and that's all we've got for you at the moment. It's round 11 of 22 in France, so they're halfway through the season. Same story in Italy, they're halfway through the season. Ivy Luix Pomigliano had a 2-1 victory over Napoli, and then Roma had a 3-2 victory over Lazio with El Mastrantonio. So Lazio really on pretty much the bottom of the table there. In the Netherlands, PSV had a 1-0 victory over Heerenveen. So Amy Harrison is on the winning side, but she was actually on the bench the whole time, didn't get a run. So hopefully her legs are going to get a run soon. There was a little bit of news that I thought we should throw to Steffen for.
Yes, they'll be, if it's not too cold, they'll be firing up the barbecues over in Norway on January the 29th when Fortuna Hearing come over for a friendly against Carly Rosbach and LSK Kavina.
Fantastic! What a trial that game that is.
Yep, that's awesome. And I've also heard that they're going to be bringing 2 top line Swedish clubs over as well, or having practice games. So there's further scope for Aussie versus Aussie in their practice.
So Carly will be back.
Carly's playing here until about the 8th, I think, of January.
About that weekend anyway. Yeah.
Oh, I've had a little freeze on Steffen there.
Oh, but, I thought I just assumed that was me. Sorry, but yeah.
No, it's all of us. So we'll wait until Steffen comes back. We'll start into our Queens of the Week and roll us out to the end of the podcast. So maybe, Eric, do you want to take us out?
Yes. Okay. So we had briefly covered this earlier, but my Queens of the Week is the entire Reading team for their heroic defending in their 1-0 win over Chelsea. So if you didn't watch it, they scored a counter-attacking goal in the 3rd or 4th minute through a Canadian Olympic gold medalist Deanne Rose, set up by one of Cheryl's favorite players, Natasha Dowie. And then they pretty much defended inside their own box for the remaining 86 minutes. There was like several heroic blocks, saves from the goalkeeper, Irish international Grace Maloney. But seriously, they just put their bodies on the line for pretty much the whole game to grab the win. And really appropriate that my Queens of the Week are Reading, a team that is nicknamed the Royals.
Very good, Queen of the Week. I like it. Nice little tie in it. And you're quite right. Natasha Dowie is one of my faves for her time spent playing for Melbourne Victory. I put together the pod post or the feature image, and I've definitely picked one out there with Reading that showcases Natasha Dowie.
I mean, I've got a few. I'm probably going to land on Sasaki from Adelaide because, I mean, a goal and an absolute peach of an assist. What a way to help Adelaide get their first win of the season. So really showing some quality. And another one that the W Jets fans put me onto is, I mean, if you want some just quality Instagram content, Elizabeth Eddy. Follow. It's like a chaotic travel blog.
I like those. The best kind of travel blog.
Can you give us a link?
I'll send the link through to so she's got some great reels going on her Instagram. So get on that if you want to be entertained.
That's at Elizabeth Eddy 2, the number 2 on Instagram. It should be easy enough to find. But thanks for the recommendation, Madge.
Mm-hmm. All right, take the W Jets.
My Queens of the Week are the teams Breidablik and Real Madrid, who played in the Champions League this week in Iceland. It was freezing cold. It didn't get above 1 degree during the match, and Real Madrid actually had to wear their away kits because they probably wouldn't have been able to see each other. It was that snowy.
Oh yes, of course. White home
kit. Big shout out to them. Also a big fan of the ground where they play, because you know how we have like Rebel Sport and, you know, we've got whatever Liberty and all these kind of sponsorships. They have just like a home loan conveyancer and a local butcher. Which we love to see. We love the Sunday League feel of international football when we can get it. But yeah, really, if you get the chance to watch the highlights, pretty amazing to see that the game went ahead. It's an AstroTurf pitch, but still they had to come out and like remark the lines at our halftime. So big shout out for that game going ahead.
Okay, hopefully we can get a link to that one as well and we can throw it into the show notes. And then Steffen, some thoughts from you.
Yeah, I was going to give it to Sasaki as well this week, but what I'd like to do is give a shout out to Emma Stanbury. She I've watched her play in the Capital Football Leagues the last couple of years, and ex-Canberra United player. It would have been very satisfying for her to come out and put on a good show yesterday. She was very influential in the Adelaide midfield and got the win against Canberra. So well done, Emma.
You didn't want
Right. I feel bad that I haven't got Sasaki in our feature image, so I might have to redo some of my homework. And then just to finish out my Queen of the Week. So we're not doing 13 Queens and Kings of the Week this week. Last week was a bit much, but I've picked Fridolina Rolfo, which unusually I kind of felt like I wasn't her best friend when we were looking at the Olympics, because the Matildas didn't fare so well against Sweden. But she scored Swedish international. She scored a top goal for Barcelona, and it's actually my goal of the week. So shout out to Fridolina. Great job. Very, very schmick. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, we should wrap up. See you later and talk next time. Thoughts? Anyone? Nope. All right, we are all done. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us on the podcast today. We hope you've enjoyed what we've been talking about. Let us know if you thought it was great. Let us know any questions that you've got. We'd be happy to take questions and talk about those as well. But on behalf of myself and all of the team at Beyond 90, thank you very much, and long live the dub.
Yeah, pleased with the 3 points, but not the performance. I don't think we played well, but our 3 points is great, and we go to next week. Missed passes, no consistency. We didn't really create chances, even though we were in the front third. So yeah, wasn't happy with that.
You must be happy with Remy's performances.
Yeah, Remy scored the 2 goals, so you've got to be happy with a striker scoring goals. She scored last week. She seems very confident, obviously, coming from the Matildas, and she's a real good, not just her goals, but her link-up play is excellent, so she's getting better and better.
That performance, was that maybe due to the fact that the Wanderers were also a bit kind of all over the place and maybe drag you guys into that kind of style?
Yeah, it was. The girls were saying, there's a lot of bumpy balls out there and things like that, so it was a bit of a fight, but when we did have it cleanly on the ground, we gave it away, and then the fight began again, so we've got to take accountability for that. But yeah, it did make it tough in terms of that. But again, I am pleased that we got 3 points.
And Sarah Hunter, she came off a bit early, but I mean, you must be pleased with how she's come in, that passing.
Yeah, she works hard. It's probably the main reason she's in there starting at the moment. She runs all day, she tackles, she's got tenacity. But yeah, we thought we'd put Rachel on for a bit to give her a bit of a run as well.
Yeah, look, I thought first half we controlled the game fairly well. Lots of possession, good territory, some good patterns in there. Obviously, just not capitalising on our chances. And then second half, again, lots of chances. And obviously taking a few of them. Probably lost a little bit of control at times in that few more momentum shifts. But overall, it was a solid performance from the girls, and I'm very happy that they were able to go out and I guess rectify, or to an extent, some of the things we talked about last week. The turning over of possession was a lot less this week, which is good. We look to play a more positive attacking brand of football, which is what we've been working on a lot of the pre-season. So for me, it's still not perfect, but there were really good signs today. Yeah, exactly, and that's one of the big reasons we signed her. Obviously, she's here and she's wanting to play, and she's a local girl, but she gives so much in terms of her experience and her quality. And it's a short season. It's only 14 rounds this year, so obviously a little bit more, but it's still a short time. So it's still really important to kick off in a really positive manner. Would have been great to have had her last week to make that start, but at the same time, you can't deny the influence that she had just with her calmness on the ball and her ability to find things. And she worked really hard in attack to try to make forward runs as well, and defensively she was solid. And I think that had a really big impact on what other players were doing around her too. Other players were stepping up. The midfield worked really hard. The wingers were looking to get in behind as much as possible, knowing that they had people on the ball that could find them. So yeah, that's definitely what she was able to bring, and what you could see in terms of our performance.
What was the most pleasing thing out of it?
Just that we started to play Jets football. Like we talk about it at training, the way that we want to play, again, we could still be a bit more consistent in patches, but there were things that hopefully the crowd saw tonight that were very positive, and that looked exciting. And again, you could see a team that worked really hard for each other off the ball. And I think from last week, probably the biggest thing that I was happy with was the fewer turnovers. And I think when you can actually maintain possession a little bit more, you can protect the ball a little bit more, then you can start to be able to find players. And we had a plan. We sort of obviously looked at what areas we thought we could exploit them in, and I thought that we did that fairly well tonight.
How does it feel having, now you've got an arsenal of scorers at your disposal as well, to have 4 different scorers in that game?
Yeah. Look, it's obviously it's something that we thought about when we were trying to put together the squad. And week in and week out in pre-season, it's very hard to pick a starting lineup. But we talk about our bench players being game changers. Like, that's kind of the language that we're using, because we want to make sure that they feel valued and that they know they still have so much contribution as well. And look, to be able to have girls coming off the bench and scoring, girls on the field scoring, fullbacks scoring. Look, it was a good day. People were clinical, and I think it was to know that you've got those people that can do that. Again, it's just we want to make sure that we can keep driving that momentum forward into future games, and that you still get those people consistently looking at creating chances and finishing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what did you say to them in the change rooms after the game? Obviously, relief and great to get the win, but 12 games to go. What did you say
after the game?
Yeah.
Look, I honestly, I don't speak too much after the game. I think we have to let them come off that and enjoy the moment. It's really hard, I think, sometimes to reflect on a performance and for people to really take things in directly after a game. I obviously I said to them, good job, and then obviously we'll evaluate and we'll reassess and we'll look at areas for improvement. When we go into review, first training session back, we'll spend a bit of time making sure that they can see positive things, but also that we're feeling accountable for moments where we maybe let some things slip, because we want to keep getting better as well. It wasn't a perfect performance, so whether it's right or wrong how I do things after a game, but I think the moment is they're all a little bit excited. They're about to go to recovery, so it's we want to make sure that they're actually going to take things in when we sit down, but definitely make them aware that I was happy with what they did.
That performance, do you think, I know you've talked about wanting to return to finals this year, do you think that performance kind of shows everyone exactly what you're capable of and that you are a top 4 team?
Yeah, look, I think it shows the potential that we have. I think we need to be more consistent. I think we need to have more performances like that before we can start to jump the gun. But I think, if we can put together performances like that, if we can be clinical, we'll definitely be very competitive. And if we do make those finals, it will be hopefully a handful. But like I said, it's very early, and there are a lot of good teams. We need to make sure that we're putting those performances together week in and week out. And I think that's probably been a challenge for us in the past, to be consistent with winning performances week in and week out. So it's important for us to start this role and build on the momentum we've just generated from tonight.
How good also is it to, Kirsty and Lucy had their debuts in the league last week, and Georgia had hers tonight?
Yeah. So it's obviously it's great to be able to give people opportunities, and when you see them play and they step up and they have good moments, it's brilliant. And again, to know that you're bringing in people that can do a job, and it's fantastic. So I was pleased for Oz. She did very well.
So you had Kirsty get her first goal after just 2 games in the league. How do you think that's going to affect her game, and how positive is that for her?
Look, I think she was a bit shocked, but initially, obviously, then I think excitement. But I think she'll take it in her stride. She just wants to play, and I don't think she'll get caught up too much in that one moment. I think it will be something that fuels her, and And obviously, I think it'll be something that people will see, not that she's not capable of doing that, but I think like she'll start to look at how she's able to get forward more and contribute to attacks. And I think it's just something that she's going to relish. Like, it's a good moment for you as your first goal in a W League, second game in front of a home crowd in your home team that you've played in the academy for. So it's a tremendous day for her, but I think she'll just take it in her stride, and I don't think she'll get too caught up in it. It's back to the training pitch on Monday, and obviously we'll reassess where she's at as well.
So Sunny Franco and Marie Delvig were fantastic. Did you make a conscious decision to attack Wellington down the flanks, or is that just the way it happened?
Tactics here. Look, I think we like to play an attacking brand of football, and we have people in those areas with quality because that's partly what we want to do. But we also knew that they had a very distinct style of play with their fullbacks liking to get forward as well. And if you can win the ball in certain areas with those players gone, then there's space in behind. So look, there are little things that we talked about. We definitely spoke, particularly obviously Sunny started last week, and I thought against Sydney both our wingers were coming probably a little bit too deep to the ball, and we didn't have a lot of threat in behind. So that was a message this week to make sure that we got ourselves into positions where we could hurt defence, whether that is in wide areas or over the top in central areas or with combination play. It doesn't bother me how we do it. It's just being connected and making sure that we can hurt teams by looking to turn them around at times.
And of course, there was another first A-League women goal, I believe, for Sophie Harding. So after she didn't quite find the back of the last season, must be great that she's got off the mark pretty early.
Yeah, look, again, Soph's been working hard in pre-season, and you can see she went away after last season with a drive to get better and to try to make sure that she was being more consistent in front of goals. That was definitely something that we were asking of her last year because she is such a threat and she can find herself in those positions. So for her to score a goal today, and it was a good goal, very happy for Sophie.
Yeah, it definitely was hard. I think in terms of what we were aiming for was trying to use the platform of last week and build and improve off of it. And I think in moments we did, but not consistently enough. And I think we kind of made mistakes and we got punished for them. And I think with the players that they have and the quality of players they have, we have to expect that. And I think they definitely showed some quality at times. And even their performance from last week to this week, they've definitely kind of done some work and improved over this week, and they showed that today. So yeah.
Yeah, because did you feel like Newcastle were a much tougher opposition than Western Sydney were last week as well?
They certainly felt like it today. I think some of their players really stepped up today and kind of showed their quality. And it definitely, obviously we didn't have the lack of surprise anymore. We knew they were going to be prepared for us. They knew we were going to play with high pressure. I think at times we slipped in that as well a little bit, and we probably didn't keep our foot on the gas as much as we would like, and we gave them a little bit too much space. And I think with that type of player that you're playing with, if you give those players too much space, then it means they can dictate the game a little bit more. And I think that's what we started to see in some of the second half, is they started to dictate a lot more, and we weren't disrupting them enough, and then we ended up paying for that.
Yeah, and despite their kind of early dominance, it was a rather fortuitous way that they opened the scoring. It must have been a bit of a sucker punch. Yeah,
definitely. But that's the game for you. We live and we learn from it, and we know that teams like that are going to kind of punish us when we kind of make those sorts of mistakes.
Yeah, do you think the team was rattled a wee bit in the middle of the second half, and there's those 2 goals in quite quick succession?
Yeah, I think, and that comes with the inexperience and like the nature of the team as well. I think it's really hard when you kind of go a couple of goals down in quick succession, especially from our own mistakes as well at times. I think they kind of wore that, and it was trying to then bring them back up to go again and push through. And that's learnings for them. That we're in a league. We're not in a kind of World Cup situation or a tour or short turnarounds. This is an extensive league. We're not going to be judged off just our first game. We're going to be judged off our entire season. So we need to work on that.
Yeah, and I asked Ava earlier in the week who was going to be the first goal scorer, and ends up being her. I mean, that must be a nice consolation, because it seemed like it meant a lot to the team to have someone get to hit the first goal.
Yeah, definitely, and it meant a lot to her as well. And I know that you look at that result and it's hard that the goal kind of goes missing a little bit, but that's still a little piece of history for us. It's a little piece of history for her, and I'm just proud that they kind of kept pushing for the goal as well. They even tried to push for a second one. So even though there was a moment where they got rattled, I think they tried to kind of ramp back up again and put some pressure on and try and win the ball back and try and get some goals, which, yeah, I'm really happy for Ava.
Yeah, I'll just ask one more. Doesn't get any easier with Sydney FC. I think you just asked this on TV, but how do you pick the team up after tonight's result, heading into another tough one next weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but you know, this is what they're in for. They knew kind of when they signed up that you know, it was going to be a full league. They knew there was going to be some highs and some lows, and you know, yeah, we had a high last week of a good performance, and we weren't able to back it up. And I think, you know, what we've talked about with the group is kind of, you have one good performance, people aren't going to really judge you off that. We need to learn how to back up and how to improve our consistency, and that's going to come over time, and we're going to learn that. But yeah, definitely it's going to be trying to get everyone back together, find the positives within that game, I think will be important, and then also find those moments that we really need to learn from. Yeah, definitely. I think that was the hard thing, is the momentum for the first. You know, there was a lot of hype, there was a lot of build up for that first game, and there was a lot of adrenaline and emotion with that game. But now it's about us settling into the season and realising that this is now week in, week out. You know, we have to keep preparing, we have to keep learning, we have to keep improving. Whereas I think there was so much hype for that first game, it almost became the focus. That first game was the focus rather than us as a team in the season. So, you know, I think now they're starting to realise that this isn't just going to, people aren't just going to lie down for us and expect this to turn into this big fairy tale moment of this new team that comes in. So yeah, it's definitely learnings for us, but now it's going to be the focus on us as a team, how we want to improve, and we want them to keep being brave, we want them to keep playing. That's how they're going to learn, but they're also like young players who are going to make mistakes as well, but it's going to be how we respond to that, how we adjust and how we prepare for the next team. It's huge. I think to see like young players coming through and like people being given those opportunities to debut, given opportunities in this league as a professional in female sport, it's massive for them. But then to come on and get a goal as well, for both sides, it's something that is just going to kind of keep improving their visibility as a player, but also kind of their development as well along the way. So yeah, it's pretty huge.
And of course, Mona Walker, well, a long-time Jets Academy player. Did you have to fight hard to get her to play for Wellington, obviously given her connections to this club?
Yeah, and it was a little difficult, but I also think she has quite strong roots to New Zealand as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was a hard decision for her, but I wouldn't necessarily say we had to fight too hard. I think, yeah, her roots and her family being from New Zealand, I think she was kind of thinking that she really wanted to kind of represent kind of a Kiwi club, I guess.
Of course, the first time we saw Talitha Kramer in action, and she was kind of a late signing, if I remember. So what kind of, perhaps for the people that don't know, what are kind of her qualities that made you decide to add her to the squad, I think, last week?
Yeah, we were kind of looking for somebody that was going to, by that point we had kind of a pre-season, we were underway, we knew kind of how the team wanted to play, so we were trying to find somebody that could complement that, and I mean, if you look at Tilly's reputation in terms of, and her experience, like she's a very physical player, she's an aggressive player, she's quick, she kind of likes to play the way that we do, so, but she also brought some experience to the team as well, so it was kind of that complementary fit for us of, we knew she would fit into the way we wanted to play, but also bring that kind of maturity and experience of being here, done that before as well, that hopefully would help the players around her.
And I think if you could go in a bit more detail, what exactly do you think you could have done better out there today?
Yeah, in all honesty, like I think we gave them a little bit too much space at times. You know, our whole kind of plan a lot of the time is to kind of disrupt play, to kind of be a little bit more in people's faces, to be more aggressive and try and not allow them to settle into the game. But I actually feel like some of their bigger players and like Ivan Egmans and people like that, we gave too much space, and I think that's learnings for the girls being quite young and probably giving them quite a lot of respect, and then being maybe worried about the type of player they are and the fact that they're so good, and then giving them a little bit too much room. But if you give those types of players too much room, they actually end up kind of punishing us for that as well. And I think there was times where as well, you know, we were trying to be brave in the play-out moments. We were trying to be creative at times, and I think we got ourselves into trouble in certain moments with our execution and our consistency of our passes as well. So I think we turned over possession, and then they punished us for it as well at times. So yeah, I think those are kind of two areas that, on reflection, just as the game's been played, I thought hurt us a little bit.
Okay, and obviously it's 9 days to the next game, but do you think you'll be making any changes, or is it too early to say?
I think too early to say. I'll probably watch the game back and kind of reassess. We wanted to improve off of the performance we had on Friday, the previous week against Western Sydney, but I don't think we really did. I think we lost some of our discipline in our defending moments and stuff, so I think we still need to look at ourselves first and look at how we want to play and kind of get back our structure and our discipline in those moments as well. But in terms of making changes, I think it's too early to really kind of say that at the moment.
Okay, so we'll be back in Wollongong, so I imagine that'll be a lot easier for your team?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice, as much as it's not home for some of these players, it's kind of become our home, I guess. So yeah, it'll be nicer to have that kind of, I guess, more routine in terms of leading into that game.